Are there any specific hard lessons that you've learned as a VC that perhaps other investors don't talk about?
Well, some of these really amazing founders are known to be big assholes. I don't necessarily believe that being an asshole is correlated with success. Other investors will have exposure to founders like that. And I really need to feel like I'm going to enjoy working with this person. Life is too short to be working with folks like that.
Lee Edwards
is an investor
and general partner at Root Ventures.
What do you look for when deciding to invest in a startup?
A lot of times what I'm looking for is...
Welcome back to Decoded. My name's Alfie Whattam, and this is the show where I speak to experts about what it takes to build great teams and companies. Make sure that you click the follow or subscribe button for more great content like this, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. So, Lee, you're a general partner at Root Ventures, which has invested in several incredible deep tech companies. So what do you look for personally when deciding to invest in a startup?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think for us, so we're all engineers. We have become investors, I guess, through chance over our careers, and we invest in other technical founders that are solving hard problems at the seed stage, pre-seed stage. So I think most of the founders we end up talking to end up, we don't always necessarily assess the technical skill and talent. A lot of that stuff sort of comes for free when they walk in the door. So I think a lot of times what I'm looking for is, what's their business mind like? Are they interested in the business? There are a whole lot of people, that sort of build tech for fun, hobbies, open source projects. These are all fantastic. I'm glad these exist, but not all of them are going to be good companies. And I think one really important factor is just the desire to learn the business side. Most engineers are really smart people, and I don't necessarily believe the sort of shape rotator word cell dichotomy. I do think a lot of people who have technical talent are also good at people skills and other things like that. They just sort of need the opportunity to do it. So I think that's the number one thing, is just are you going to be excited about it? Is as a CEO of a company coming from an engineering background, the job is going to be very different. And is it going to be fun for you? Are you still going to want to do it 60 hours a week when maybe a year or two in, you're not writing much code, if at all, and you're on sales calls, you're fundraising, you're thinking about the business strategy, you're maybe making hard choices in service of the business. So yeah, I think a lot of that tends to come out when we talk about the business model in the early days. They may end up in a different place in the future. You may pivot, you may discover new things, but it should be a robust conversation where it's clear that the founders are kind of thinking about these things. Okay.
That makes a lot of sense, especially given that you invest in AI and deep tech and those types of worlds where that deep technical knowledge is essential. But typically when I'm investing, my thesis is that I'm looking for usually a CEO who is a little bit more sales and marketing. They have domain knowledge, but then you have a correct CTO who really can build it and has an understanding of the business side as well. They're not just purely focused on the product. They are focused on the fit aspect and how to make it commercial. And then usually for me, it's great if there's a third co-founder who can help with operations or finance or other important things as well. But from your perspective, are you less concerned when you're investing at pre and seed stage in finding that sales and marketing side? Are you happy just to invest in technical founders and then help them figure out the go-to-market? Or do you prefer it if they have somebody on the team that can do that? What's your view holistically when looking at the founding team from that angle?
Yeah, I think probably I guess I'd have to look at the numbers, but I mean, certainly every company we've ever invested in has had at least one technical founder. I think probably most of them, maybe even a super majority of them, have had all technical founders.
Yeah.
I think in the early, especially in the pre-seed days, so much of what you're doing is building the product, testing it in the market. It's unclear a lot of times what the sort of non-technical founders will be doing. And yeah, I think there's sort of maybe a broad definition of what technical means. Like we've sort of had, I can think of one company we had where this person had a mechanical engineering degree and they were building software, but this is increasingly true. I'm also not so big on credentialism, right? I'm not sure I care so much about what degree someone had or where they got it from. But the fact that they're building and hands-on, these days, there's so much more you can do with less using AI, obviously. So, I expect we'll see a lot more of that. People with, maybe non-traditional backgrounds, but they've started to build things with AI. I think I would probably consider that person technical as long as they're kind of shipping code. I think there's a lot of different profiles and models for success in startups. There's all kinds, right? All ages, all backgrounds. I'm not saying, these other kinds of founding team compositions aren't going to be successful. They're just not the ones where I think we have kind of an edge and a value add, being engineers ourselves who've sort of moved into business.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a USP. I don't meet a lot of VCs that also can code in Python or whatever. So it's nice that it stands out specifically in your space, right? So that's what you look for, Lee. What about the flip side? You've seen hundreds or thousands of pitches probably. What are the red flags that instantly kill a deal for you, aside from them not having technical knowledge? Because that's obviously a tick that we've established. What else is a common thing that comes up which turns you off from wanting to partner with somebody?
Yeah, that's funny. I maybe touched on that a little bit in the previous answer accidentally, but yeah, I mean, I do think one is just having no interest in the business. I think there's a sort of a difference between maybe there's an interesting product or technology and they're not sure exactly what the business model is going to be. Are they going to charge per month or per seed or per gigabyte or whatever? That's different from sort of, not having any interest in the business. And I tend to, I'm not sure there's a question where I'm not sure there's a specific red flag there, or a question that gets a certain kind of answer that's the red flag, but it's more what comes up in the conversation. So I think, most of the pitches, I try to move most pitches off of the deck and into a conversation. Another would be I think the dynamic between the technical founder and non-technical founder. I can think of one. Or I always want to avoid kind of dunking on real founders. So I try to anonymize this as much as possible.
Yeah.
But there's one that a pitch that my partner Chrissy and I saw where the non-technical founder was really pretty patronizing to the technical founder, kind of stopping her from answering her questions, so that, he could sort of stay on the pitch. And
wow.
He kind of felt like the way to do the pitch is to stay on the deck and move slide by slide. And it was really horrible. And yeah, we Chrissy and I kind of looked at each other, and after we left the meeting, we were like, so clearly that's a no. The question is, do we reach out to her and tell her to dump the co-founder? That was a more extreme case, but you do see things like that quite often.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of horror stories, and I mean that's one example, right? I've seen similar things happen before, and yeah, if you can't get along with your co-founders and team, and you don't respect them to be able to answer a question, then how are you going to get along with your customers and your wider team once you start to hire and scale? And what kind of culture is that going to lead to? So that makes a lot of sense, and I'm fully with you on the go-to-market side, because they don't have to have figured everything out commercially. There's going to be iterations, they're going to pivot, there's going to be things that are going to change, but if they haven't at least thought about it, it's definitely a red flag. If you're able within the 30-minute intro meeting to ask them questions that they haven't even got an idea of an answer about, then clearly they haven't gone into the business model in enough detail to really make this a scalable operation. Now, it's not a blanket rule. There are people that have a brilliant idea, they've got a great demo, and they just don't have that commercial sense to kind of scale it, and they need a little bit of help, and that's fine. But all the best investments that I've ever seen are when the founders almost don't even need the investors that much for help. It's great when they can help, but oftentimes the best bets I've made are you invest and you leave them alone, and then you find out 6 months later that they've achieved product market fit and it's going amazing. This is a quick message to tell you about my company, Alpha AI. We built Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter who screens candidates for you on autopilot. You can make your recruitment process 10 times faster, 90% lower cost, and significantly improve the candidate experience, all with our AI agent for hiring. Learn more at welovealpha.com or click the link below in the description. And now, back to the episode. Okay, what about like hard lessons? You've almost very well answered elements of this in the past questions, but are there any specific like hard lessons that you've learned as a VC that perhaps most other investors don't talk about? It's often not said, but you've realized it from making bets in the past.
Yeah, this is another one I want to answer carefully. I think there's an interesting dynamic so we invest in sort of each of us is doing maybe 1 to 2, maybe 3 investments per year. Okay. So very concentrated portfolio, working very closely with the companies. And again, I think there's all kinds of founders, all kinds of personality types. But I think what I found is I really need to feel like I'm going to enjoy working with this person and spending a lot of time with them, because I will be. And when I look at, I'm thinking mainly kind of the companies where I'm most excited, where I'm sort of most looking forward to the one-on-ones every week. This is kind of like I should be much more highly prioritizing this as a filter. Like, hey, we gel, we could get along, which is an interesting thing to say, because it's not to say that someone that has a dissimilar style from me can't be successful. Of course they can. But there are 4 of us, right? And we all have kind of different styles and different personalities. And, the nature of a seed fund like ours is every deal I'm in has to be awesome. I don't have to be in every deal that is awesome. So there may be, an LP was asking me the other day about like, well, some of these like really amazing founders, and he like named some unicorn companies, are like known to be big assholes. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's fine. It's just, life is too short for me to be working with folks like that. So I'm not going to be seeking those out. I think other investors will have exposure to founders like that. And I don't necessarily believe that being an asshole is correlated with success. There are a lot of tremendously generous, nice, great people who are CEOs of unicorn companies. I've thankfully known some of them. I think when you think about a career like this, and just thinking long term, now that I'm 6 years in, it's something I'm going to be spending the rest of my life on. I want to be spending my time that way. You can buy secondaries or late stage growth or public stocks in asshole founders if you want. You don't actually have to work with them.
Especially, yeah. I mean, when you're getting into the early stage, right, at seed, it's a 5 to 10 year agreement that you're signing, like at a minimum. Like, obviously, in the world of AI, there are some exceptions where you'll go from 0 to $1 billion in a year or 2, but they are the outliers. Obviously, we are looking for the outliers, but generally speaking, we're looking for people that we are going to be happy working with for many years to come, and that's not to say we have to agree on every single thing. It's good to disagree. It's good to have debates and diverse opinions. That's what creates the best ideas. But you want to do that with people that you like and can trust. I would hate to partner with people that I just, whether that's my own VCs or whoever, like it's really important to us. And we've turned away capital before because it just like the relationship just clearly wasn't there. Like, so yeah, makes a lot of sense. So look, you're living on like the edge of the future. The types of companies that you're seeing are what the world is going to look like 10 years from now. You're not investing in some accounting, software provider. It's a little bit more technical and interesting and exciting than that. What emerging technologies to you could have a breakthrough moment, but to perhaps the rest of the world, they may be a little bit overhyped.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think AI in general would fall in that category for sure. And I know that we need another monologue on AI, but within it, specifically AI code gen, right? I think a lot of people are very excited about. I think there's a few things that are going to be interesting about it. I don't know that we know what the final form of AI code generation and agentic code generation is going to be. I don't think it's going to be a VS Code plugin. I think it'll be something else, and we may not have even seen it yet. But yeah, I think there's still going to be developers have always been strongly opinionated about the ergonomics of their tools. So there have always Vim and Emacs have been around forever, and then the IDE was sort of a very different take on how to build code that sort of integrated more things, right? And a lot of developers said, "Screw that! I don't want any of that. That's too easy mode. I want to stay hands-on with this stuff. I want to use a command line era text editor." And yeah, I was one of those till recently. I was using Vim primarily until maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And this exists for just about everything. I mean, there's developers that prefer Java and developers that prefer Python for solving the same kind of problem. And there may not be a particularly good reason logically to pick one over the other. Developers tend to think of themselves as very logical people who are kind of immune to making emotional decisions and decisions based on brand, but it's sort of not true. They're doing it all the time. So I do think we'll end up with lots of different modalities of how people are building code with AI from like a UX perspective, and also just very different user types. Like I think people building things with Lovable or V0 may be very different from the people that are building things with Cursor, who may be very different from the people who are building things with Zed using AI. And who may be different from whatever the next, form factor coming down the pipeline is. So I'm really interested in that. I don't know where it's going at all. But I think it's all people are talking about, but still, when I go to like college campuses, I think professors don't see this coming. They sort of know that it's big, but I don't think they know how big it is. I think a lot of people think of, well, this is kind of like the compiler, or it's kind of like the next programming language, or it's kind of like the next web framework, and they don't realize it's like it's like the human operator of the elevator is that's not going to be a job anymore. There's just going to be elevators. It's like that level. I'm not saying there's not going to be programmers, but there certainly will be. But it's a dramatic change in like how they even do the work, or like what the technology is.
Yeah. In a world where the Lovables and the Bolts and the Replets get more and more capable to the point where they eventually surpass what Cursor and those platforms, Claude will get better and better, obviously, as well. But at a point where you can build a B2B SaaS enterprise grade application using English, using your voice,
Yep.
Will there be more or less developers in the future?
History suggests there will be more, and I think that may or may not be the case here. It's always tempting to say this time is different, but I think one thing is what is a program, right? I think if a user sort of pulls up Lovable on their computer and says, "Hey, every time a founder sends me a pitch deck, pull the PDF out, parse it, give me the summary, and give me a quick market analysis, and then put that document in my calendar, make a link so I can click it and like add space for me to add notes." So that's a program, right? Like they just wrote a bunch of code, but they might not call it a program. They might not even think of it as software. It's just sort of the Star Trek computer. Like the computer in Star Trek is probably writing a ton of code every time someone says computer whatever. right? But nobody thinks about that as programming. But you still have Data, who is writing the code that is making the Star Trek computer work. You know, a lot of the engineers who are building these AI tools are using Zed, one of our portfolio companies, right? Which is a much more hands-on editor. It has agentic editing. It has sort of a composer-like view. It has AI-based autocomplete, but it's fundamentally a code editor for engineers. And I think the people that are building AI models and agents and these code editors themselves are not sort of using plain English, and they're sort of, you know, building much more complex things. So I think as the sort of tools to build basic things become more and more capable, engineers are going to be working on harder and harder problems. The ceiling gets raised. And that's really exciting to me. I mean, that's another area. I don't even know what falls in this category, but like, what is the next frontier of things that sort of add more capability rather than, I'm very excited about lowering the floor and making it so everyone can write software and build automation in their lives. I think that's very exciting. But then, like, what's the frontier, right? Does anything come after AGI?
I mean, ASI, but depends on your definition, right? I mean,
right.
I mean, do you think we'll get there? Because it seems like the definition of AGI is a constantly shifting, you know, goalpost. Because originally it was like, have we beat the Turing test? And I mean, yes, we have. So do we have AGI now? But then now we're going into a world of agents where AGI is what exactly? Do you think in like 10 years from now we'll have regardless of what the definition is, do you think we'll have a universally majority acceptance that we have AGI?
Yeah, I feel like that's more of a social question than a technical question, to be honest. Yeah. Like, it may end up being a marketing question. Just for these model providers, like, does it serve them to position it as AGI or not? Yeah, I mean, certainly we'll have, you know, increasing levels of passing the Turing test. Today, for example, in AI code gen, you know, it's funny how often I really feel like I'm working with a junior engineer, a very junior engineer, which is great. I love working with junior engineers. You know, so it's not a knock on it or on junior engineers, but yeah, certainly it becomes more and more capable of being a more senior engineer. Yeah, I don't know. I think for my definition of AGI, it's hard for me to imagine exactly how we could get there. I guess we maybe have more of a spiritual definition, and we'll have to be arguing about the computer's intent and its beliefs and how much is it really thinking. And is there something special about the human brain that's different from silicon? But I don't know. Once we get to that point and we're having that argument, I'm not sure from like a technology perspective if it really matters. It's more of a question for, you know, the Pope, I guess.
I know. It's a crazy time to be alive. We are getting to the point where, yeah, the spirituality and philosophical realms are entering the code base. I mean, it's an interesting question, right? All right, let me finish up with this. You've previously worked at companies like iRobot and Groupon, which have built highly successful products, some of the most cutting edge in the world. I mean, I have a iRobot and it's incredible, like what it can do. It really is quite mind blowing. What product decision do you see startups often overcomplicate? You meet with thousands of them, and like you must see, especially in your world where people are building really, really hard solutions to impossible problems, you must see people over engineering stuff when in reality, even though it's a hard space, you've got to keep it simple. So what decision do you see people often overcomplicating?
Yeah, iRobot's a really funny example of this. So for years and years, I would have my friends say like, oh, how is the Roomba so smart? It always finds the corner. It like remembers where the dirty spots on the floor are and all this stuff. And like, you know, this is different now, but back then I was there in 2007. It's like, no, it doesn't. It was running a calculator. Like it did random walk and it had a cliff sensor, it had a bump sensor, and that's it. And it operated entirely on, if you run the thing for long enough, it'll eventually hit every spot via random walk.
Okay.
And people
So
are just so
no
eager
LiDAR,
to anthropomorphize it.
no Tesla AI level, no LiDAR,
No.
none of that stuff. No.
No, it came later. The current models that are sort of more expensive, part of that was the cost of these sensors came down. Part of it was, and this is after I left, there was a lot more competition in the market. And yeah, obviously now there's so much competition that the company's, not doing too well, but the users did eventually kind of want this like floor mapping, and the competitors, especially the Chinese competitors, were building this stuff in. But in the early days, I think our belief was always just like, and to be clear, I was on the military side, not on the home side. So this is from conversations I was having with my my colleagues on the home side over lunch, whatever. But we had setups where we would just sort of compare the different vacuum cleaners, and the whole point is you're using it costs the same as a Dyson. The Dyson has sort of superior characteristics for creating a vacuum and sucking up dirt. But what we found is that people that own a Dyson would vacuum their apartment once a week, 2 times a month, something like that, maybe once a month. But with a Roomba, you use it every day. So it's sort of doing an 80% job every day without thinking about it, pressing the button, walk away. The end result would people had a much cleaner apartment, especially like young men in that demographic in particular. So
I am the TAM for this product.
Exactly, and I was too when I was absolutely. And so yeah, we would sort of run these things side by side and just sort of demonstrate. Well, if that's your use case, who cares if it takes 30 minutes or an hour or even 2 hours? It's you're doing it while you're at work. So we kind of prioritized the scheduler before we prioritized floor mapping or anything like that. And it's a lot cheaper, which is super important in a hardware product. So I don't know. I think it was actually a very good example of sort of what's good enough, not being sort of on the military side. We were doing intelligence. We were doing AI. Starting in 2007. We were doing AR starting in like 2006. And we weren't using any of that stuff on the home side because it just wasn't necessary. We talked about it, we debated it all the time, and you'd always have people come into the company and be like, oh, like we should be using the latest technology. We need to be like sticking AI on this thing. And you're like, no, this it doesn't even have a microprocessor. It has like a microcontroller. Like we're not putting like advanced software on this thing when it doesn't actually improve the outcome for the core use case. So I would say I don't know, maybe that's the thing, is just figuring out like, how are your users really actually interacting with this product? What do they actually care about? And solving real problems for them, and not just sort of exciting applications of the coolest new technology, which is always fun, but not always so good for a startup.
I mean, goods and shipped and selling is far better than perfect and advanced, but nobody ever sees it or uses it. So even in deep tech, you've got to get something out there. You've got to iterate. You've got to build on it. Obviously, there's a little bit of a higher bar in your world, I suppose, but still don't set the bar so high that you never actually get anything released. I mean, have a high bar, but don't let it stop you from actually shipping.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can always iterate later. Okay, cool. Lee, thank you for this. Super useful, especially for people in your world. I feel like they get a lot of value out of this conversation. If they did and they want to learn more, what is the best place to go? Would it be your LinkedIn, X, the fund's website? What would be like the number one URL to check out?
Yeah, root.vc is our command line website. So if you do a who is on me,
really cool, the website.
Yeah,
I've very rarely seen a VC website that looks the way that yours does, and I mean that as a compliment. So if people check it out, they will see it's not your average kind of Sequoia or Axel landing page. It's a little bit more quirky and cool and unique.
Yeah, well, now there's a few more. We've got a couple firms that forked our website, which we allow. It's MIT licensed, so. But yeah, I think it's one of the better marketing things we've ever done, kind of by accident. I don't know. We just kind of did it for fun, and it really has resonated with people. So
Cool. Amazing. Lee, thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you click the follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Introducing Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter. She's an AI agent who works 24/7, screening candidates on autopilot, conducting interviews in 30 different languages, uploading all the best candidates to your applicant tracking system. Hire 10 times faster at 90% lower cost and significantly improve the candidate experience. Visit welovealpha.com to start your free trial now.